Today, crossing a city requires almost no physical effort. You sit down, press a pedal, and the landscape begins moving around you. For ancient humans, distance was not measured in kilometers. It was measured in hunger, daylight, exhaustion, injury, and the possibility of never returning. There were no roads, engines, maps, or signs. Every journey began with a body, a direction, and uncertainty beyond the horizon. And yet, using almost nothing but muscle and memory, humans reached nearly every environment on Earth. They crossed deserts, mountains, frozen plains, rivers, forests, and eventually oceans. The history of transportation begins with the human body itself. Humans are not especially fast. Many animals can outrun us easily. Our advantage was never explosive speed. Our advantage was endurance. The ability to continue walking after faster animals had exhausted themselves or overheated. The arches of the feet absorb impact. The Achilles tendon stores and releases energy. Long legs make every stride more efficient. Sweat cools the entire body while many mammals depend mostly on panting. Humans were built not to win the sprint, but to survive the journey. Footprints preserved at Laetoli in Tanzania show upright ancestors walking through volcanic ash more than 3 million years ago. Those tracks represent more than movement. They record the technology that would eventually carry one branch of primates across the world. For millions of years, legs were our only vehicles. Every tool, child, animal hide, and piece of food had to move at walking speed. Migration did not happen as one heroic expedition. Families moved gradually, following water, animals, seasons, coastlines, and stories about distant places. One generation entered unfamiliar territory. The next generation was born there and pushed slightly farther. Beginning tens of thousands of years ago, Homo sapiens expanded beyond Africa into the Middle East, Asia, Europe, and eventually the Americas. Nobody walking east through Asia knew their descendants would one day reach an ocean on the opposite side of the planet. They were not walking toward a destination marked on a map. They were solving the immediate problem of where survival might still be possible. But ancient movement was not always random wandering. Archaeology shows materials traveling far beyond the places where they naturally occurred. Obsidian tools appear hundreds of kilometers from volcanic sources. Seashells appear deep inland. Amber crossed forests, rivers, and mountain ranges. This means information moved before the traveler did. Someone knew where a resource existed because another person had described it. Ancient humans were building networks without roads, exchanging tools, materials, partners, knowledge, and perhaps entire belief systems on foot. Walking conquered enormous distances, but water created a different problem. A river could interrupt a route that had taken weeks to follow. For a terrestrial animal, deep water is not simply difficult terrain. It is an environment where the body can no longer perform normally. At some point, humans noticed that certain objects resisted sinking. Logs floated. Bundles of vegetation could support weight. Animal skins trapped air. The first watercraft may not have been invented as machines. They may have been accidents that someone recognized and repeated. A person held a branch while crossing a river and remained above water. Another tied several pieces together and carried food across. Eventually, floating stopped being an accident and became a plan. Stone tools discovered on Flores suggest ancient humans reached an island that remained separated from the mainland even when sea levels were lower. Whatever carried them has disappeared. Wood and bamboo decay, but the tools reveal that the crossing occurred. Reaching Australia required an even more extraordinary achievement. Humans crossed stretches of open water without seeing the destination from their starting point. That journey demanded preparation. Several people had to leave together, carrying food, water, tools, and enough knowledge to survive after arrival. It was not simply travel. It was the deliberate transportation of a community into an unseen world. Thousands of years later, Polynesian navigators transformed ocean travel into one of the most precise knowledge systems ever developed. They crossed the Pacific using stars, currents, waves, cloud formations, birds, wind patterns, and the changing color of the sea. They did not navigate without instruments. The ocean itself was their instrument, and generations of observation had taught them how to read it. Their vessels carried families, plants, animals, tools, and enough supplies to establish life on islands separated by thousands of kilometers. Humans had learned to move across land and water, but distance was only half the problem. The other half was weight. A person can walk for days, but only while carrying a limited load. Heavy meat, firewood, tools, and shelter materials quickly become impossible burdens. The first solution was simple: stop lifting everything. Animal hides, branches, or wooden frames could be dragged across the ground, allowing one person to move more than the arms could carry. The travois improved this idea. Two long poles created a frame that transferred part of the weight to the ground. It was inexpensive, reparable, and made from materials that existed almost everywhere. But wood and leather rarely survive long enough for archaeologists to find them. Then humans discovered that transportation did not always have to be powered by humans. Dogs became the first domesticated animals and eventually pulled loads across snow and ice, especially in northern environments where dragging was easier than carrying. A team of dogs could move food, tools, shelter materials, and children across landscapes that would have exhausted a human carrying the same weight. Other regions produced different partnerships. Donkeys carried goods through dry terrain. Reindeer moved sleds. Llamas transported cargo through mountain systems. But no animal transformed human distance as dramatically as the horse. Evidence from the Eurasian steppe suggests humans began controlling, milking, and possibly riding horses thousands of years ago. Before horseback travel, information moved approximately as fast as a person could walk. Afterward, messages could cross entire regions in days. Trade expanded. Herds became easier to manage. Communities could relocate faster. Warfare changed because mounted groups could arrive before warnings did. The horse did not merely increase speed. It reduced the apparent size of the human world. Then came an invention that seems obvious only because we inherited it: the wheel. Humans had already crossed seas and colonized distant lands long before wheel transportation appeared. The first wheels may have developed from rotating platforms used to shape pottery rather than from any attempt to build a vehicle. Turning a wheel sideways was not enough. It required an axle, a stable frame, suitable terrain, and animals or people capable of pulling the load. Early wooden wheels were heavy. They cracked, sank into soft ground, and performed poorly on rough landscapes. A cart was useful only where the surface allowed it to move. That created a new requirement: roads. Once wheels, draft animals, and prepared routes were combined, transportation became a system rather than a collection of isolated inventions. Goods could move between cities. Armies could carry food and equipment. Agricultural surpluses could travel far enough to support large populations. Spoked wheels later made vehicles lighter and faster, allowing chariots to combine speed, mobility, and military force. Road networks connected territories so effectively that political control could expand beyond the distance a ruler could personally travel. Empires were not built only through weapons. They were built through the ability to move grain, soldiers, messages, taxes, and authority. Every major transportation breakthrough solved a limit created by the previous one. Walking provided range but limited weight. Dragging increased weight but remained slow. Animals increased power but required food and control. Wheels increased efficiency but demanded roads. Boats crossed water but required navigation, construction, supplies, and collective trust. Human travel evolved not through one brilliant invention, but through thousands of small observations preserved and improved across generations. Today, we cross distances our ancestors would have understood as separate worlds, and we complain when the journey takes a few extra minutes. A flight crosses an ocean in hours. A train carries hundreds of people faster than the strongest horse could run. Movement has become so reliable that we rarely think about the systems beneath it: roads, engines, navigation, fuel, maps, and global cooperation. But every modern journey rests on the same ancient impulse: the belief that something valuable may exist beyond the place we already know. Our ancestors walked into landscapes they could not name, crossed water without knowing what waited beyond it, and trusted memory before maps existed. They did not conquer distance because travel was easy. They conquered it because remaining still was sometimes more dangerous than moving forward. Every highway, harbor, railway, and airport is a distant descendant of the first human who looked toward an unfamiliar horizon and continued walking. They did not know where the path ended. They moved anyway,